On the 1-year anniversary of my husband's death, I went back to the same church where we held his funeral. I walked in slowly, carrying the kind of grief that doesn't fade with time. I sat in the same pew where we used to pray, hand in hand, and closed my eyes to speak to God. But in that sacred silence, a voice behind me cut straight through my soul. She needs to learn to stand on her own. I've taken care of everything. The will is mine now. It was my daughter, my own daughter. Maybe you felt that too, when the one who should have protected you became the one to hurt you most, when love was replaced by greed. My heart shattered. I nearly stood up to leave. But then, something slipped out of my husband's old Bible, and what I found wasn't just a piece of paper. It was fate, and it wasn't finished yet. The morning felt colder than it should have. Not because of the weather, but because of the ache that settled into my bones long before sunrise. I got dressed slowly, my fingers trembling as they buttoned the same navy coat I wore to his funeral. I could still remember the feel of his hand in mine, right there in that church. As I approached the doors, I paused, half hoping to hear his voice, half fearing the silence. The air inside was thick with incense and memory. Every step toward that pew felt like walking into a dream I didn't want to wake from. I sat exactly where we used to sit, left side, 3rd row, close enough to see the stained glass, but not too close to be noticed. My hand instinctively reached for his, but of course it found only empty space. A wave of longing surged through me, almost too heavy to bear. I closed my eyes and began to pray, not for answers, but for strength. The silence wrapped around me like a blanket soaked in sorrow. It was familiar, and it was crushing. Memories began to play like an old home movie. His laugh during Sunday service, the way he'd squeeze my hand when a hymn touched his heart, the way he'd whisper, "Amen," with his eyes closed, like God was listening only to him. I could almost smell his cologne still lingering in the wood of the pew. That scent, that sound, that presence, it haunted me in the gentlest way. And yet, it made the emptiness even sharper. He was everywhere and nowhere. As tears welled in my eyes, I reached into my purse for a tissue and pulled out the small Bible we always brought. It was his. Edges worn, corners folded, filled with scribbles and verses. I opened it without thinking, letting the pages fall wherever they wanted. For a second, I felt peace, like maybe he was near, just for a breath. My heart whispered, "Talk to me, please, just once more." That's when I heard the voice. It didn't come from above or from within. It came from behind me. A woman's whisper, low, sharp, and filled with something darker than grief. "She needs to learn to stand on her own," the voice said. And then, with cruel clarity, "I've taken care of everything. The will is mine now." I froze, because that voice didn't belong to a stranger. It belonged to my daughter. I didn't turn around right away. My body stiffened. My breath caught mid-prayer. I wanted so badly to have misheard, to believe it was someone else, some awful coincidence. But then I heard her laugh, that soft, smug little laugh I knew since she was a child, when she used to think she'd outsmarted me. Only this time, it wasn't over a cookie she'd stolen or a lie about homework. This time, it was about a life, my life. She'll be fine. She always lands on her feet, she continued, speaking to a woman I didn't recognize. Her tone was casual, almost bored, like I was an old suitcase she was finally done dragging around. I felt like I was outside my own body, floating above the pew, watching a scene I couldn't stop. Her words sliced through the silence of the church like a blade through linen. Each syllable carved something out of me. The woman she spoke to murmured something I couldn't hear, but my daughter responded clearly. "No, there's no going back now. The lawyer won't say a word. It's done. Everything he left. It's mine." I gripped the edge of the Bible, my knuckles white, my heart pounding so loudly I feared they'd hear it. My own daughter, my own flesh and blood. And yet her voice was colder than any stranger's. I tried to breathe, but the air felt thick, poisoned by betrayal. How could she? After all the nights I stayed awake rocking her through fevers, all the sacrifices we made to give her a good life. My husband adored her. He'd do anything for her. And now she was using that trust as a weapon. I wanted to scream, to cry, to get up and demand answers. But I stayed frozen, afraid my legs would give out. Tears blurred the stained glass in front of me. Every image of saints and angels felt like they were watching me break. I had walked into that church searching for comfort. Instead, I found my daughter's betrayal dressed in whispers and shadows. I thought the worst pain was losing him. But I was wrong. Because nothing prepares you for the moment your own child becomes a stranger with your heart in her hands. My fingers trembled as I tried to process what I had just heard. I didn't want to turn around. I didn't want to see her face. Because I knew if I did, it would shatter something permanent inside me. My throat burned with unshed tears, and my palms clutched the old Bible like it was the only thing tethering me to the ground. That Bible had been through weddings, funerals, hospital rooms, and quiet mornings. It still smelled like the cedar chest we kept it in. It still felt like him. I wanted to disappear inside those pages, to crawl into the verses and find him waiting on the other side. As I shifted the Bible onto my lap, something slipped out from between the pages. At first, I thought it was a bookmark, but it didn't flutter like paper. It landed with a soft thud on the polished wood beneath the pew. I bent down slowly, my body heavy with sorrow and suspicion, and picked it up. It was an envelope, yellowed at the edges, sealed but aged with my name written across the front in a hand I would recognize anywhere. His handwriting, my husband's, and right below my name, the date. Dated just weeks before he passed. I couldn't breathe. My hands cradled the envelope like it was made of glass. I looked at it over and over, as if it might vanish. How had this stayed hidden all this time? He must have tucked it into the Bible himself, hoping I'd find it when the moment was right. And now, here I was, with her betrayal echoing behind me. And this letter, this possible lifeline, resting in my hands. I felt the tears fall freely then, not just from pain, but from the faintest flicker of something else. A spark I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. That letter was more than paper. It was presence. It was intention. He knew. Somehow, he had known. Maybe not exactly what would happen, but enough to leave behind something for me to hold on to. I brushed my fingers across the envelope and whispered, "Thank you." A quiet whisper that only the saints might have heard. I was still surrounded by grief, still pierced by my daughter's betrayal. But suddenly, I wasn't alone in it. He was with me, still guiding me. And when I finally opened the letter, what he wrote changed everything. I broke the seal gently, as if afraid the paper might crumble under my touch. My hands shook, but not from fear, from the weight of knowing this was his voice, reaching me across time. The letter smelled faintly of old paper and cedar, like it had been waiting in silence for me to find it. His handwriting filled the page, slanted and strong, like the man I remembered. As my eyes scanned the first line, my breath caught. "If she does what I fear," he wrote, "then the money has spoken louder than love." My heart stopped. He knew. Somehow, he knew what she might become, without him here to guide her. The words flowed with such clarity. It was as if he were sitting beside me, speaking softly into my ear. He wrote about our family, our dreams, our sacrifices, the way we built everything together from nothing. He reminded me of our long nights on the porch, whispering hopes into the wind. "You've always had the strength," he wrote. "Don't let grief dim your light, and don't let her take what's rightfully yours." Each line felt like a thread stitching my soul back together. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear his faith in me until that moment. Then came the part that stopped my heart completely. "The house is yours, the name is yours, and this letter is proof." He'd attached a copy of the true will, signed, dated, witnessed. My eyes filled with tears so thick I could barely read. All this time, I'd believed she was simply fulfilling his wishes, when in truth she was rewriting them. She had lied, manipulated, taken what didn't belong to her, and he had protected me, even in death. I pressed the letter to my chest, feeling his words sink into my skin. The church around me seemed to fade, the voices behind me turning to distant static. I could almost feel his hand on mine again, steady and sure. He wasn't gone. Not really. His love was etched into every line, every choice he made to protect my dignity. I thought I'd lost him forever, but in this letter, I found him again. Alive in truth, alive in purpose, and suddenly, I knew exactly who to call, and what had to be done. I stepped outside the church with the letter still clutched to my chest. The late afternoon sun hit my face, but I barely felt its warmth. Everything inside me was trembling, not just from shock, but from the heavy decision I now carried. I didn't go home. I didn't call my daughter. I walked 2 blocks down to the small law office my husband had trusted for over 20 years. The same one we'd visited after his first heart scare. The door creaked open, and the bell chimed, like the beginning of a reckoning. His lawyer, Mr. Hemsworth, looked up from his desk and froze when he saw me. He stood slowly, like someone facing a ghost. "I've been expecting this," he said, his voice low. I handed him the letter without saying a word, watching the blood drain from his face as he recognized the handwriting. He opened it carefully, his brows furrowing, then softening. When he looked up at me, something in his eyes shifted from guilt to resolve. "I should have told you," he whispered. "But she threatened to ruin the firm. I was afraid." His words stung, but I understood. My daughter had cornered him, used power and pressure like a true manipulator. "But the truth is here now," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. He nodded and pulled out a file from a locked drawer. "Your husband left 2 wills," he confessed. "One was signed under stress, after your daughter convinced him it would simplify things. But days later he came back, alone, quiet, and he changed everything back to you." He slid the original copy across the desk, the one that matched the letter. It was all there, the house, the savings, even the small cabin by the lake where we used to take family trips. All meant for me, all protected by his final act of love. I stared at the signature at the bottom of the page, tracing the familiar curve of each letter. Relief flooded me, cold and hot at once. Not because I was getting anything back, but because he had believed in me until the end. He hadn't abandoned me, not emotionally, not legally. And now that I had the truth, I was ready to look her in the eyes. She didn't even flinch when I walked through her front door. She was seated at the kitchen table, sipping wine like it was any other evening. The same kitchen where I used to braid her hair before school. The same counter where she once built forts out of couch cushions and hope. Now the air felt colder, thicker. I didn't wait for permission. I sat across from her and placed the letter and the original will on the table between us. Her smile faltered. Her fingers froze on the glass stem. "I found it," I said, my voice calm but unshakable. His real words. His real wishes. She didn't speak at first, just stared at the letter as if it were a ghost come to haunt her. Then she laughed, soft and bitter. "You don't understand how things work anymore. Mom, you're clinging to the past." I leaned forward, eyes locked on hers. "No, I'm holding on to the truth. The past is what made you. But this," I tapped the paper, "this reveals who you chose to become." Her face hardened, like stones setting in place. "He was confused," she said. "Sick. He didn't know what he wanted." I shook my head slowly. No, he knew exactly what he feared. And unfortunately, you proved him right. I could see her jaw tighten, the mask slipping just enough to reveal the girl who once wept in my arms after nightmares. That girl was gone, replaced by someone colder, sharper, and willing to sell her soul for control. A long silence stretched between us. Finally, she asked, "So what now? You gonna take me to court? Humiliate me?" I looked at her for a long moment, my heart breaking in ways I didn't know were still possible. "No," I whispered, "you already did that to yourself. I don't need revenge. I just need peace." I stood up slowly, gathering the papers. Her eyes followed me, hollow and unreadable. My steps felt heavy as I moved toward the door. But before I left, I turned around and told her one last thing she'll never forget. I paused at the doorway, hand resting on the knob, heart pounding in my chest. She stared at me, defiant but uncertain. That armor she'd built, of pride, control, and distance, was starting to crack. "You tried to take my roof," I said, voice low but firm. "But all you stole was your own soul." The words didn't come from spite. They came from something deeper, a place of sorrow and clarity. I didn't need to raise my voice. The truth did the shouting for me. She looked away, but I saw it. The flicker of something in her eyes. Regret, maybe, or just the sting of being caught. I turned the knob and stepped out, letting the door close softly behind me. I didn't slam it. I didn't need to. My justice wasn't loud. It was in the silence that followed, in the weight of the papers she could no longer erase, in the echo of my footsteps reclaiming what was mine, my name, my place, my peace. Back home, I walked through the front door of the house she'd tried to steal, the smell of lavender and old wood wrapped around me like an old friend. I placed the Bible back in its rightful place, next to his photo on the mantel. The sun filtered through the curtains just like it used to when he'd read the morning paper, by the window. This wasn't just a house. It was the story of our life together. And now, it was safe again. I didn't call her. I didn't post anything. I didn't need to explain myself to the world. The justice I'd found wasn't for display. It was mine to hold in quiet dignity. I had thought justice would feel like revenge, but it didn't. It felt like coming home after a long, brutal storm. I could breathe again, stand taller, smile, even if faintly, knowing I had done right by him and by myself. And as I sat on the porch that night, I realized something else had survived all of this too. That night, the sky was streaked with deep purples and fading gold, like the closing of a long and painful chapter. I sat on the porch wrapped in an old knit shawl he'd bought me one Christmas when we couldn't afford much else. The air was cool, crisp with the scent of pine and distant fireplaces, and for the first time in a long while I felt like I could exhale, truly exhale. The silence around me wasn't empty. It was full of memory, full of meaning. I listened to the wind rustling through the leaves, the soft creak of the wooden swing beneath me, and I whispered into the dusk, "I did it, love. I kept your promise." It wasn't just about reclaiming a house or a name. It was about standing up when I thought I couldn't, about choosing truth, even when it broke my heart. I'd walked through fire and betrayal, and somehow I was still here, still whole, even if cracked in places. Maybe especially because of the cracks. I didn't need to announce anything to the world. I just needed this quiet moment, this breeze across my cheek, to know I had survived with my soul intact. I had been shaken, yes, but not undone. My footsteps earlier that day, leaving her house, crossing the street, entering mine, felt like a march back to myself. Every step was a reclaiming of my voice, my past, my future. And as I sat there now, watching the last light disappear behind the trees, I realized something strange and beautiful. I didn't hate her. Not really. What I felt was something more sorrowful, deeper, like mourning a part of her that had vanished. The little girl who used to fall asleep in my lap, safe and warm. She was gone. And maybe I couldn't save her, but I could save myself. I looked up at the stars beginning to appear one by one, like tiny lanterns lit just for me, and I thought of him. How he would have smiled, poured 2 cups of tea and told me, "See? You've always had it in you." I felt him everywhere in that moment, in the whisper of the wind, the steady beat of my heart, the letter tucked safely in my drawer. He had protected me the best way he knew how, and now I had done the same for myself. But what I didn't know then was that this journey had one last gift waiting for me. In the quiet that settled over the house, I began to understand what had truly been saved. Not just the walls around me or the papers that proved my right to stay, but something much older, much deeper. My faith, not just in God, though he had been my silent companion through so many storms, but in the belief that love outlasts betrayal, that what's built with devotion doesn't crumble with lies. Sitting alone in that house, I could feel his presence in every creaking floorboard, every photo on the wall, every thread of the quilt draped across my knees. It was more than a home. It was proof that goodness, even when bruised, doesn't die. There had been moments I wanted to give up, days when the silence felt like a punishment instead of peace. When I doubted myself, doubted that I'd been enough for him, for her, for this family we'd tried so hard to build. But the letter, the will, the truth, they weren't just legal victories. They were whispers from above, reminding me that I hadn't imagined it all, that the love we built was real, that his promises didn't vanish with his last breath, and that somewhere beyond this life, he had fought to protect me in ways I never expected. What faith protected wasn't just a house. It was my memory of us, my dignity, my story. I realized then that no matter how much she tried to rewrite it, the truth had roots deeper than her greed, and truth has a way of rising, even through the cracks. I had feared being forgotten, by him, by the world. But faith reminded me that being remembered isn't about noise. It's about legacy, quiet, strong, undeniable, just like him. Just like the love we shared. I walked through each room that night like I was rediscovering it. The chair where he used to read, the kitchen where we danced barefoot on rainy nights, the hallway where she took her first steps. The past wasn't lost. It had simply been waiting for me to return with open eyes and a steadier heart. And now I could finally see it, not as a wound, but as a gift. A gift that was nearly taken, but ultimately restored. And when I stood by the window and watched the sunrise pour gold over the porch, I whispered a prayer. Not for vengeance or justice, but for peace, for her, for me, and for the woman I'd become through the storm. The next morning, I walked into town with my head held higher than it had been in months. People waved like they always had, unaware of the storm I'd just weathered. But I felt different now. Like every step was grounded in something stronger than before. I passed by the bakery where he used to buy me cinnamon rolls on Sundays, and for the first time in a long while, I went in. I ordered one, sat by the window, took a bite and let the sugar melt on my tongue like a memory returning home. It wasn't just a comfort food. It was a ritual of joy I'd put on pause, and now I was pressing play again. Later that week, I made one final visit to the town clerk's office. I didn't need to change my name. I never gave it up. But I requested a new plaque for the front of our home. The Walker House, it would say. Not for prestige, not for anyone else to see, but for me. A reminder that what we built was still standing, that the name he gave me wasn't just a surname. It was a symbol of endurance, of vows that didn't die with the body, of a love that wrote itself into the walls and floorboards of the life we made. That afternoon, I stood in front of the house as the sun cast soft golden light across the roof. The new plaque shined gently in the light, subtle but firm. I traced the letters with my fingertips, whispering his name under my breath. And in that moment, I didn't feel alone. I felt carried, not by bitterness, not by anger, but by grace, by memory, by the quiet strength he always saw in me, even when I couldn't. Sometimes we carry a name out of habit, but sometimes we carry it like a torch, a reminder of where we've been, and the light that still burns in us despite everything. I didn't win in court or make headlines, but I stood up when it mattered, and I walked back into a house I refused to abandon. That is the kind of victory no one can steal. Where are you watching from? Tell me your city and age in the comments. And if this story touched your heart, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter in our journey.